And we're back. It's the last day of this week for writing, and we are getting back into our rough draft and finishing it up. And I did have a thought after I was thinking about my rough draft and what I wanted to write, so I think I'm going to add a line before I move on to my next few paragraphs. So here's Lulu. Hi. I just like having her around while we're working on this. It's fun. Okay, so I've got Lulu there. I've got my to-do folder. I'm pulling out my papers. It's so nice having them where I can find them. I have a lot of papers. All right, remember this was my pre-write, and I did fold it to help me so that I could see what I had already done. Sometimes it's nice to be able to say, look what I already did, haha, and then other times it's just nice because it doesn't make you feel so worried about all the work that you're working on. Writing takes some thinking. So I was thinking about this, and I did have originally in my middle part, Lulu says, I am not a toy, I'm a pet rock. So I want to do that before I move on to my last two paragraphs today, because I was like, oh my gosh, that's really important. So I'm going to say, this cat made her mad. Lulu said, let's say, ooh, I know, she's going to say, hey. And I'm looking literally right off of my pre-write here of what I wrote. I am skipping lines. I am not a toy. I am a pet rock. She is, hey, I am not a toy. I am a pet rock. Now, I'm putting a lot of dialogue in here. Remember, you only have to have 2 places that you put it. If you want to put more, you can. You just can't make your whole entire paper be, oh my gosh, what's going on? I don't know. Oh, look at that. Oh, I see it. Oh my God. Because we don't know, if it's all dialogue, we don't know who's talking. We don't know what's happening in the story. We don't know anything. So make sure that your whole entire paper isn't just dialogue of people talking back and forth. We have to say things like, she screamed, or they said, or then they yelled, or they pointed. And we have to also have words that are explaining what happens in our story. Like, she was rolling along. This made her mad. She wasn't a toy. So we have to have words that aren't dialogue in our story. If you ever read a graphic novel, those are with the pictures and the words, that's different because we have pictures that we can see and it's just the words, the little speech bubbles that we read. Your paper doesn't just have pictures with little speech bubbles. So that's why we can't just have a paper with just speech bubbles. This actually has to have describing happening, because now instead of pictures, we just have the words. So whatever would be in those pictures, we have to now put into words, which is why I talk about all the details. So just so you know, can't all be dialogue. Now, this is my introduction paragraph that I indented, my beginning, my middle, and now I've got my end. We're going to try to solve the problem, and then my conclusion paragraph is where I'm going to wrap it all up. Nice, neat bow. This is the ending. So this is my ending paragraph here. I didn't have much. I was going to think about it as I was writing. Hopefully it would come to me. And I said, they talk, both pets, so they can be friends. They decide they're both pets. So I think because she just said something, now I think I'm going to have the cat think about that for a minute. So I'm going to say, I made sure to indent, starting a new paragraph, new part of my story. So indent. This made the cat think, and I'm going to add for a minute. That's a good detail. I'm telling the amount of time he's going to think. This made the cat think for a minute. He was a pet too. He's somebody's pet. And then I'm going to have him introduce himself. I'm going to have him say, I'm sorry first. He's going to apologize. I'm sorry. My name is Charlie, just like my cat. Meow. My name is Charlie, and now I'm out of space. This is a cross out line. I'm not going to write all the way down here at the very bottom. Sometimes then my pencil kind of skips up on my paper. So I just drew a little arrow to remind myself, hey, you kept writing on the back. Now I'm going to flip it over. So I said, my name is Charlie and I am a pet too. This is still him talking. I haven't done my other quotation marks to end his dialogue, his talking. So this is all what he's saying. We should be, and remember I need to skip a line. I didn't do my X's on this side, so I just have to remind myself. We should be friends. Now he's done talking. I'm going to put my little quotation marks there to end it. Those little bunny ears at the end. They look like two little bunny ears. Maybe two little, like, I don't know, scratch marks. I don't know. And remember, he said, I'm sorry, my name is Charlie. So he introduced himself, and so we know who was saying this, but I think I'm going to have him then say, then he's going to, should he smile or purr? He's got to do something at the end. Then Charlie smiled. If a cat smiled, is that like scary or not? Then Charlie purred. Then I'm just going to have him smile. Of course, you get to decide in your story. See how sometimes I have to stop and think about it as I'm writing it and adding things in? That's what writers do. So I have done my ending here. We figured out a solution. They're both pets. They should be friends. So now my conclusion, this is where I'm going to wrap it up. Sometimes you might have a lesson you want people to learn. I know in some of your stories this week that you read, there were lessons to be learned. So look, I'm already down to my last paragraph, my last part of my story, this last box. Whenever we have a part of our story, it has to have a new paragraph. So I indent. But I am going to skip lines here. And I'm going to do this really quick to remind myself. I almost forgot to skip lines. Teachers do it too. And I'm going to put a little arrow in here just to remind myself, indent. That'll help when I'm typing too, to remind my brain. So I've got my last paragraph here. And he had just told Lulu we should be friends. So Lulu, she heard that and she's going to think to herself. I already have that they bounced off, they're friends every day, and then a lesson that I wanted them to learn, but I think I want Lulu to respond to him first, just to wrap up that conversation that they had. They're talking. So I'm going to say, we should be friends. Then Charlie smiled. Lulu smiled back. Smiled back at someone. I smiled back at you. Lulu smiled back. And she's going to say, that sounds, skipping lines, like a great idea. She likes that idea. She'd much rather be friends than be used as a cat toy. So remember when she's talking, I had to put these quotation marks to make it, to show that she is talking. That's my dialogue. Dialogue is when someone talks in a story. And then I'm going to say, that sounds like a great idea, Lulu said. Let's see. Lulu and Charlie bounced off. I'm going to say they bounced instead of just rolled away or walked away. I like to be clever with my words. Lulu and Charlie bounced off into the forest to play. And then I said they're friends every day here. So now I'm going to say something like, every day after that, Lulu and Charlie met in the forest to play. I didn't say something like friends every day. I just said every day they met to play. And then I think I'm just going to do my ending sentence here. Friends really do come in all shapes and sizes. Friends really do come in all shapes and sizes. I like this story. I can keep doing that. Just to remind myself, I skipped lines on this paper. If you wanted to do this before you started writing today, you could. And so I've done my whole entire paper. I took my pre-write, the notes that I jotted down. I expanded them a little bit, which means I wrote a little bit more as I was writing. And I thought, my writing brain kicked in. You have a writer brain too. So I've got my introduction, beginning, middle, end of my story, and my conclusion where I'm kind of wrapping up my story. If there was a lesson to learn, that's where I said it. And each of these boxes gets an indent in my paper. Remember, that's kind of like a dent in a can or a dent in your car if you bump something. So I dented in my words. There's one for my introduction, beginning, middle, end, and my conclusion. I made sure to skip lines so that when we go back to revise and edit next week, it'll be really easy to add things where we want them to go. So this is my story. I hope you guys have fun writing today. I'm going to give you the rest of the time to write. Make it a goal to try and get a rough draft done today, because next week we are going to be working on revising and editing. If you don't get your rough draft done today during that free Friday chunk of time, you need to go in and finish your rough draft, kind of like we would at school when we have free Fridays. Sometimes we go outside, sometimes students have to stay in. If they haven't finished work, it's like an extra big long recess time. So make sure that if you haven't, you do really need to try and get your rough draft done so that we can revise and edit together. All right, kiddos, I will see you next week for writing. Don't forget to take all your papers, put them in your to-do folder or whatever working folder you've labeled it so that you don't lose them. Until next week, I'm excited to read these when they get all done. All right, guys, see you later.